Okay, so today we're diving into something, I guess you could say it's a bit exciting, but also kind of daunting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how would we as humans react if we actually made contact with some intelligent alien life out there? And I don't mean Hollywood scenarios. I mean, like, really thinking about the psychology of it all. How would our perceptions shape what happens?
That's a question people have been asking for, well, centuries, really. But the really interesting part, to me at least, is that how we react might say more about us as humans than it does about those aliens.
Exactly. That's actually what grabbed my attention in this blog post by Bright Garlick. He's got this whole developmental continuum he's mapped out for human reactions to meeting ETs.
Now, that is a fascinating concept. It kind of suggests that meeting the truly unknown, something as huge as intelligent life from another planet, could really change us. Almost like a developmental leap.
Okay, so let's break this down. This developmental continuum, what does that even look like?
Well, imagine like a spectrum of reactions. On one side, you have folks in denial, resistance. They cling to what they already believe, see everything through that lens.
Like that saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So someone who's into, say, conspiracy theories, they might just see ETs as part of that.
Precisely. Their worldview. It's a filter for this huge event. Now, further along, you get people whose main emotion is fear. They might see contact as dangerous, hostile, maybe even the end of the world.
The whole alien invasion anxiety thing, right?
Exactly. Like a primal fear of the unknown, but on a massive scale.
Yeah.
Now, going deeper into the continuum, there are people more open to the idea. They approach it with curiosity, maybe even hope.
Instead of freaking out, it's more, this is incredible, what can we learn?
Precisely. It's an opportunity for knowledge, expanding what we understand about the universe. This group, they're more likely to embrace the unknown, see the potential for good change.
So we've got denial, fear, and then like this curious open mindset. It's just so fascinating that Bright says where we fall on that. Well, it could depend on a bunch of things, like your past, your culture.
Absolutely. He even mentions this thing called locus of control. Basically, whether someone feels in control of their own life or if it's all external forces acting on them. If you have a strong internal locus of control, meaning you believe you have control over your own life, you might be more likely to be curious about ET contact, maybe even excited.
Interesting. So they see it as a challenge they can engage with, learn from.
Exactly. They might even see it as a chance to, help build understanding between us and this alien civilization. On the other hand, folks with a more external locus of control, they might feel helpless, more afraid, like they have zero control over any of it, leading to, anxiety or paranoia.
It's like how we react to aliens. It's not just about them. It's about how we see ourselves in the universe.
Precisely. And Bright, he illustrates this with examples of people with totally different views on extraterrestrial contact. You familiar with Credo Mutwa, the shaman?
Right, Credo Mutwa. He definitely had a more, shall we say, cautious view of extraterrestrials.
Yeah, Mutwa's perspective was definitely wary. He saw ETs as potentially having hidden agendas when it came to humans, maybe even, wanting to exploit us. Kind of a parasitic relationship, but that just goes to show how different people's reactions can be.
It's a complete 180 from someone like, say, Rachel Bree, right, Bright's ex-wife. According to his blog post, she had an encounter with an extraterrestrial when she was a kid.
Exactly. She's like the opposite end of the spectrum. That childhood experience, if you can even call it that, seems to have had a really big impact on her, on how she sees the world. She sees ET contact as something positive, almost spiritual.
Really shows you how these personal experiences, especially early in life, can shape how we see things, even something as massive as meeting aliens.
For sure. And then you have Whitley Strieber. His experiences in his writing, they kind of fall somewhere in the middle. He's written about his own encounters, and they're intense, often kind of unsettling.
Yeah, there's this feeling of mystery, almost uneasiness about his stories, which adds a whole other layer to this.
Totally. He embodies that ambiguity, wonder mixed with apprehension. ET contact. It might be a lot more complicated than we think. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because what about the researchers studying all this?
Oh, right. He suggests they are just as vulnerable to these psychological forces as anyone, right? That it could even influence their interpretations, their conclusions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is so important to remember. Researchers, they're just like everyone else. They've got their own biases, their preconceived notions that they bring to the table.
It's like trying to understand another culture. You're always going to be looking at it through your own lens.
Exactly. And that goes for whole cultures, societies, too. Imagine if contact was confirmed. How would different countries, religions, ideologies all react?
Wow, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Would it bring everyone together, or would it be chaos?
It really makes you think. And this brings us to another important point about Bright's continuum. It's not static. It's a process,
Not like we just hit acceptance and that's it.
right? Our understanding how we react, it'll probably keep evolving as we learn more about these beings, who they are, what they want. Something that seems scary at first might turn out to be harmless, or, the other way around.
So it's fluid, like any kind of cultural exchange, just, well, on a much bigger scale.
Precisely. And going through that process, we have to remember that there could be good interpretations and bad. Approach the unknown carefully, but with an open mind.
A real balancing act. And since we're talking about navigating all this, Bright mentioned some other researchers who've explored these ideas, people like Bud Hopkins and John Mack.
Yeah, their work is important to understanding how this conversation has developed. Hopkins, he's known for his work on the abduction phenomenon, and he tended to be a bit more skeptical.
Right, he often focused on the scarier side of these alleged encounters, which I get it plays into our fears about the unknown.
But it's important to remember that he acknowledged these experiences, even if he was cautious about interpreting them literally. They still had a huge impact on people.
And then there's John Mack. Totally different approach.
Totally. Mack was a psychiatrist, a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he argued that a lot of these encounters, even though they could be strange, unsettling, they could also really change a person for the better.
He saw the possibility for growth, even a spiritual awakening.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
He didn't just dismiss these experiences as fake or, people being delusional. He saw that they could shift how someone saw themselves, their place in the universe.
It's like he brought this whole spiritual dimension into it that often gets ignored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His work reminds us that contact, it wouldn't just be about science, but about what it means to be human.
It's wild to think we're even having this conversation. Like for so long, aliens were just science fiction. And now here we are, seriously talking about meeting them, what it would do to us, to the whole world.
It's a huge shift, yeah.
Yeah.
We're finally starting to accept that we might not be alone. And realizing that, it could completely change how we see ourselves, our place in everything.
It's like that Carl Sagan quote, right? Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. And that something incredible, maybe it's just us, reflected back at us through the eyes of another intelligent species.
Whoa, that's profound. Like the real discovery isn't out there in space, but in here, in who we are.
Makes you think, what will we be remembered for as humans? Our curiosity, our courage when faced with something totally new? Or will it be fear, division?
That is the question, isn't it?
Hmm.
And not just about ETs, but about everyday life. Are we open to new things, new ways of thinking, new ways of being, or do we let our fears control us?
It's like that thing Bright talks about, separateness versus wholeness.
Yeah, that comes up a lot in these conversations. Do we see ourselves as separate from the universe, competing with everything else? Or do we see the connection that we all came from the same place, that we have a responsibility to each other, to all life?
It's like a choice we have to make. Not just we meet aliens, but right now. Do we approach everything with fear, thinking there's not enough to go around? Or do we choose wonder, abundance?
And that choice, how we see ourselves in the universe, that might be the thing that decides what happens to us in the future.
It's kind of scary, but also hopeful. So to everyone listening, try to imagine it. First contact, what do you do? What do you feel? What are you assuming about them?
Because thinking about it now, before it happens, that might be how we handle it the best way possible. With a little wisdom, maybe some compassion, and hey, maybe even a little humor wouldn't hurt.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to Bright Garlick for getting us thinking. We've got a link to his blog post on our website if you want to learn more. And to all of you listening, keep those questions coming. This is just the start of the journey. Until next time, happy pondering.